Hello.
How's your day going so far?
So far, I was able to wake up.
That's funny.
Mhm. I meant to ask you last night, Joey, how was your daughter's dance?
Oh, it was good. It was their recital. So it was just all the different dancers for that studio. They just put on a show for all the parents.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then she has one more competition next month. It's like the big one of the year. But she's been getting a lot of golds and platinums, and she got first place overall in one of her things last month. So
Wow.
doing good. Yeah, she's doing good. All right, so who's got questions?
Am I the only one on?
Currently,
You
yes.
so far, yeah.
Oh, okay. So I'm just working through exercises. I came just to kind of listen in and see what other questions came up. Um, so yeah. I mean, I've been sending stuff in Slack. And I hate to just rehash stuff I already asked about. So I'll just see if somebody else shows up in the next two minutes or so.
Okay.
Ask it. You're here.
Okay, so right now I'm working on, this is exercise 4. I can share my screen or share my code. I think I have it figured out, but there's something going on. I have like an extra curly brace. I'm sorry, I've been up since like 4 or 5 working on between this and the New York Times, trying to get stuff caught up. But this doesn't do the help like it does in VS Code. So I'm just really struggling trying to figure out where this semicolon goes. For the most part, I've gone through and like added into the code for all of the exercises, but probably like half or less of them actually work. So because I wasn't really sure what's required, what I ended up doing is just going through the code and just adding whatever made sense, excuse me, in any place in the code that it seemed like it made sense. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's what I ended up doing.
Okay, that's fine. As long as what's being shown is what's being asked of in the comments, then you're good. As long as it's in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's not, yeah. I mean, like I said, about half of them are working, the other half not so much. But it sounded like you were going to be giving us specific feedback. So I was hoping for that. I was one of the people who asked for help getting the solutions instead of us going through activities and then just knowing that we didn't get it right, but not knowing what it should have been, even with all the training and stuff, because it's just so much. I was one of the people who asked about some sort of like debriefing, follow-up, what have you. So
So I have a solutions sandbox. Basically what I did was I created the exercises, I did them, and I just removed all the stuff that was supposed to be part of the exercise. So I have the completed code in another sandbox that you can compare to once once the deadline has been passed.
Okay, so that's good. Yeah, I know you had talked about us having 3 different folders before, but I've been trying to do this stuff on my own, so I didn't even think to even look in any folders. But the fact that it'll be available after the due date is good to know. So thank you.
Yep. Did you still want to share anything, or did you just wanted to make mention of it?
Oh, I can share. I wasn't sure if it was okay.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Let me stop this one.
Okay, hold on. Let me go over here. System. Do you see this?
Yep.
My example, my question. So this is where I was struggling with the trying to match that up. I don't know what I did there.
Oh, yeah, your curly brace. You're missing a curly brace.
I'm missing one.
Yeah, so you see, you have a start of one on line 36,
36, yes.
but there's no closing curly brace.
But where does the
At the end of line 38 is probably where you want it. So that solves that one. And then you need a closing parentheses after your closing div.
oh, how are you seeing this?
I just, all right, so let's see, now what? You got, so your includes,
Yeah.
line 37 needs to be combined with line 36. You can't have multi-line where, yeah, because it doesn't know what includes is anymore. So just
take that out of parentheses like that.
Oh no.
Oh, you mean because I broke the line up because it was so long?
Yeah.
Like that.
Like that. And then I think you need, let's see, task that includes.
I did not true because it sounded like your question says marked as incomplete, but they're all marked as incomplete. It's just that one.
Oh, so also let's see. Oh, I see. What you're trying to look for is a string called is complete, and that's not actually, that doesn't exist on those objects. It is complete is a property of the object.
Oh, is complete. Oh, okay. Because
includes is probably not the. It's not. Also, if you're doing not equals, it would be not and then two equal signs, because the not takes up not. Yeah, the exclamation point takes the place of one of them.
Oh, okay. I should have known that.
That's okay. But also includes is, I believe includes is going to give you back a Boolean.
Yep. Boolean.
So that's not going to work, right? Because you can't map off a Boolean. Okay. So the method to check for which ones have incomplete or which ones don't off of tasks, you need a different method for that.
Okay. Let's just make a note. Okay, so I'll look for a different method for that.
In fact, you're already kind of doing it.
I am?
At the start of line 36. You're already kind of doing it.
Yeah. Filter.
So you're filtering. But what filter takes is, okay, so I see what's going on here. So let's put another parentheses at the end of line 36.
36. In here?
Yep.
Like this?
Yep. So now, though, that's still not going to get us what we want, because filter takes a callback. And right now, you're just plugging in essentially a Boolean. So see how on 37, you have the callback from filter task goes to whatever whatever you're mapping.
Yep.
So filter does the same thing. It takes the task and that goes to whatever condition you want to check for.
So you're saying I added in after this?
Oh, no, nope. Actually, it's inside so after the first parentheses, after filter,
yep,
you get a task.
Yep.
And that task goes to the thing you're looking for. Right, so you would just type task, and that goes to what you're looking for. Now, it wouldn't be tasks at this point.
It's just one.
It would just be task, and that's the single task you're checking at that point in time. But includes wouldn't be the thing, right? So because is complete is a property,
Mhm.
on task. So it'd be task.isComplete is probably what you want to check for.
Oh, so I just do task dot is complete straight to
Right.
it?
Because you're checking the property right on that thing.
Oh, okay. You're right. Okay. This is the property and I'm going directly to it from,
Tasks, filter, task is complete. It still doesn't like. So, oh, you can get rid of that last parentheses on 36 because we're not inside that includes anymore.
okay, so that worked. It got me down to 2, but for some reason it's not showing the actual content. So I have to fix that.
Yeah, so you'll have to check. So if you take a look at line 37,
Yeah.
how you are rendering the task inside your P tag,
Yeah.
that's the issue right there.
Oh, because it says, okay, so it's probably, I can try it, but
Nope. Well, no, that was
No?
fine, except that needs to be class name instead of class.
okay.
And then the thing between your opening and closing P tags.
Oh, this is giving me such a hard time. So when it doesn't like, I have to figure out how to get it from being an object to
Mhm.
reading the array.
Well, right here, you just need to show the task,
Yeah.
right? So you can't render an object, but you can render the properties of an object. So task dot something,
Oh,
you could definitely render one of those things.
that's interesting. So now there's nothing there. Okay,
You
Shouldn't that be singular task
Yeah,
table?
oh,
you pluralize tasks.
Yeah.
There we
thank you,
go.
Miss Carolyn.
Hi, sweetie.
But see, here's another thing. What inside your map, what are you calling each element?
Inside of my map, am I calling them filtered tasks?
Yeah, you're not calling a task, you're calling it a filtered task. I mean, you could still use filtered task, but
No.
the variables just need to match up.
Okay. And it should be capitalized?
No, it's whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Oh, you pluralized it again.
Oh, I'm sorry, folks.
Just remember,
sorry.
there you go. I saw it. I saw it
painful
show
for
up.
someone.
I'm
So-
actually learning from you. It's like, oh,
okay.
good. Now I can do this.
Yeah, so-
Okay.
So when you are iterating over an array,
Mm-hmm.
you're each inside that callback, you're only working with one of those things at a time.
Yeah.
Right. So the array usually should have a plural name, a pluralized name, and then inside the callback, you're only working with a singular of those things.
Okay.
So that would be, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So now that you say that, I remember Max saying that because I was confused about the naming convention, and then Karen like reiterating like once you start in there, you're just focusing on one. But why did I not have to set an index in this?
Set an index.
Yeah,
Oh,
the starting point.
you just haven't done that yet.
Oh, so I should still do that?
Well, when you're rendering arrays, you want to give them a unique key prop.
Okay.
So in this case, map gives you the element and the index of where it is in
Right.
that array. And then you could use that index as your key if you wanted to. For something as small as this.
Okay, so I could do like that event target value, like where you target it and it already, no, that's something different.
Nope, a little simpler than that. So
okay.
your map callback, right now, you're working with each task. But as a second parameter to your callback function, the map gives you the index of where that element is in the array. So you do task comma index.
Oh, just to get, okay.
Just to get the index. Yep. And that's going to be a unique value just to that array. Now, it's not unique in the sense that it's the most unique thing that's going to be on the page, but for this specific array, it should be fine.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then you can use that index as your key.
Okay. All right. Alrighty. I'll stop sharing now. I'm sure somebody else has questions. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You send me your code.
No cheating. No
No,
sharing
I
of
won't
code.
copy and paste. I just can learn from it. I don't cheat. I was a Girl Scout.
Yeah.
I don't know if anyone can see, I'm wearing a Hack Up State shirt from one of my son's hackathons.
Oh, cool.
So, I got the spirit.
I was telling Jesse that they should have called it the Mohawk Valley.
Oh, was this the one from Mohawk? Oh, sorry. Yeah, this was another one he went to. It was the first one that they had.
Yeah,
up
they
there.
ended up calling it, what do they call it? I forgot. But
Utica,
I remember
hot.
I remember mentioning Mohawk to Jesse. He's like, oh, I should have called it that, but well, he didn't think about it. So just
I'm not sure I like that. It's too close to Mohawk, which could be misinterpreted by the culturally sensitive.
I suppose so. But it was
Hey.
just like, a clever play on words.
Yeah, I was thinking this was one of the ones from downtown. He did 2 downtown and 1 in Mohawk. So Valley. But it still counts because it's still a Hack Up State supported thingy. So, okay. Anyway, I'm wearing my party shirt. Vote for me.
All right. So who's got other questions
Oh,
or
tons.
or any clarifications?
I am just getting down to actually doing this assignment today. How
Mhm.
long should it take me?
That depends. My official answer is that depends.
Yeah.
So
Like 24 hours without breaks or
no, I mean it shouldn't take that long. It may feel like there's a lot, but there's just a lot of little things that are just they're kind of the same thing. They're just
different, and you have to generalize it.
They're kind of building upon the previous thing you just did.
Yeah.
So once you get into the flow of it, should be fine.
Because I think there's like 5 exercises or something, but none of them is very long in and of itself, but they have components, no pun intended.
Yes. So, the question in the chat, if I want the link once we're done. Yes. So when you're turning your assignment, the assignment is the link to your code sandbox repo that you forked. Welcome.
And I discovered something. If I am logged into my sandbox, my GitHub sandbox, Grace Hopper, World War II, I can't fork. I have to just go to the URL that you gave us to fork something.
Oh yeah, you have to be at the repo that you want to.
You can't be in your account trying to go to that repo.
No, you can. You
It
absolutely can.
wouldn't. The fork wouldn't happen.
That's really strange.
Whatever.
It should absolutely work.
So where?
I think you need to
what-
change something in order to fork it though, right?
Yeah, you just make a change in one of the files and hit save, and then it'll automatically fork, and then you got to change the name at the top.
Right.
Yeah, but we're not putting our name in the code like before.
No, you don't have to put your name in
That's
there.
a
You just have to
different-
make you
yeah.
just have to make the change and put the name at the
So-
title. Let me share my screen.
If I just put my name, that is a change, and then I can fork that.
Well, it automatically forks as soon as you save it. The
Yeah.
difference is,
I just don't want to change it for anybody else. Do you know what I mean? Like,
oh, and you won't. You can't.
okay.
Yeah.
So
you
I don't
literally
really-
can't. So
I only have
up
right
here-
privileges to my own symbol. Okay.
Yeah, so you come in here, make a change, right? You hit save, it'll say that it was forked. And then up top, you come up to the top and you
Yeah.
change this up here. Right? And then you should be good to go.
Yeah,
And it's to show up
okay.
in your dashboard.
Yeah. In my account.
Correct. Yeah, you can't make changes to anyone else's repo, no matter how hard you try.
That's good. And I can't, like, what I'm seeing is my view of what everyone else is seeing in their view.
Right, so as soon as you make a change, you won't ever see the other one again unless you go back to that URL.
Okay. So I can't mess anything up for anybody.
Yep.
And I don't
Just
want
like-
to, but I'm sure I can.
Yeah,
Okay.
so just like you can't change anyone's GitHub code unless you make a pull request.
Yeah. Also, for when we were doing some of those class practices and I was coding along, I really wasn't getting anything rendering in the web view, the browser view, the white box.
Mhm.
Why would that be?
It wasn't, well, if it wasn't rendering, it wasn't, probably the markup probably wasn't in the right spot. Right, so as soon as I make a change to here, put something in here, it should show up if it's in the right spot, right? So if I were to do something down here,
Oh, yeah, that's obviously not gonna, right,
right? So it
Got it.
doesn't know what to do down here. So you just have
Right.
to make sure that where you're placing the markup,
is in the code.
yeah, it's in the right,
Yeah, right.
in the right spot.
It's like being inside a function, you gotta be in there.
Yep.
Huh,
Exactly.
okay, it's just
In fact-
one, I would, yeah, okay.
In fact, you
Oh,
are
we'll
inside
see.
a function. So every
Yeah.
component is literally, yep,
Something like that. Oh, no, exactly like that.
exactly like that. Yeah.
Which is also something like that, right? Technically. Okay, yeah. I'm speaking my own language.
That's
I
okay.
don't understand it either.
All right. So who's got anything else? Anything else anyone want to talk about? Any other questions, clarifications? Anyone stuck on
Yes.
anything?
It's still some of the import export. When you export, it has to be default.
It doesn't have to be. Now there's a difference between the two. So let's go over that real quick. So if I were to create a new JavaScript file, we'll just call it module. Because technically this file is considered a module.
Mhm.
Right? So in common JS, you'd say, you know, module.exports, right? And that's how you export things out of a JavaScript module. In ES modules, we use the export statement. So if I have a const,
And we're in ES6, right?
or ES, yes, ES. We're like, what is it, the latest? The latest is like ES8 right now, or ES next, or
Oh,
whatever
wow.
they call it.
Okay.
ES6 was a certain point in time where
Yeah.
where the spec was, there was a certain point in time for the spec for JavaScript, for
Mhm.
ECMAScript, really.
Yeah.
That's what the
The
ES.
GC3 puts these out.
Yeah. So
Right.
yeah. So as these specs change and update, like there was ES6, right? And there were different names for it. It was like ES 2015, which was like the year that it happened. And then
Yeah.
there was ES7, ES8, and then they said, well, let's do ES next. And there's all these different terminologies. So it's not
They need to
ES6
get-
modules, it's ES modules.
Okay.
Right. So going forward, there's no like number after the mod. It's just ES
It's, you
modules.
just know it's an update or whatever. Now,
Yep.
in VS Code, it looks like it's ES5 is one of the choices when you're like setting up your settings. It doesn't seem
Yeah.
like.
So what that means is that you're telling VS Code, hey, the code that I'm working on is compatible with ES5.
Right, but what about all the other iterations since?
Any code that you write that was compatible in ES5 is going to be compatible going forward. But it's not the other way around. So let's
Right, you
for
can't,
well,
right,
for example, the browser, right? It only understands a certain level. Like ES5, I think, is where most modern browsers are. Some
Yeah.
of them are at
I
ES6.
think so.
The latest version of Chrome is probably ES6 mostly, I think. It's been a little while since I've checked.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. So if you write JavaScript that is in, let's say, ES6, but the browser you're using only supports up to ES5, the code you're writing is not going to work.
Yeah.
So you need a tool to compile it down, to transpile it down
Yeah.
into ES5, right? And there's tools like Babel.js. Oops, sorry.
I bookmarked that.
Yes.io,
I
right?
think Karen
So
gave us that, didn't she, that resource?
Yeah, so what this does is it takes ES6 code and makes it into ES5 compatible code. Right, so if I come over here, see, I've got React.
Retrofits it.
Right, it compiles it down to something that a browser using ES5 understands. So if I were to say const my function, it's an arrow function, and that goes to hello, right? So this is what it spits out in return. The browser running ES5 knows how to handle this, but it may not know how to handle this.
Yeah.
Right. So that's all that means.
When you're doing an HTML document, you can, you set the viewport and all that, and actually there's like an automatic template that goes in. Can you accommodate anywhere in your HTML document for the ES6 as well? Like in your link to JavaScript or React or?
Not really. You typically just have to target when you bundle your JavaScript.
Mhm.
When you give it to the bundler, you tell it what to target. I mean, most everyone now targets ES5 in their output.
Okay.
Right. So, and it's going to be a little while before.
So there's an even playing field. So
yeah.
You would put that in one of the scripts that's in your HTML?
So that would be in what's called your build pipeline. There's a tool called, Babel, right?
Mhm.
Between Webpack and Babel, Webpack takes everything and like smashes it together into a single bundle or multiple bundles, depending on how you set it up. But Webpack uses Babel to take it from ES whatever down to ES5.
Oh.
Right. So, and that's all in this pipeline.
I remember first time I came across Webpack, we were analyzing a site of choice, like for accessibility and the like. And so I used the National Education Association because I used to work for them, their custom search engine. I managed it. And I said, oh, Webpack, this is cool. I never saw this before. So they use it constantly.
Yeah, it's just a way to take all the different libraries you're using. And then once you have the code that you need for the browser, Webpack like kind of trims off the fat. It says, okay, well, you're pulling in all these libraries just to develop this thing, but you don't really need everything in production.
We'll put in
so
what's-
you'll
yeah.
trim some of the code off, and then
Yeah.
we'll minify it, so it's kind of obscured, and it's also smaller, and so it's less of a file size to send to your clients.
Yeah.
And then it does all of that for you. You just have to configure it in such a way to do it.
So would you drop Webpack into your code, or would you have to put your
No,
code inside Webpack, or how do you?
Webpack is a separate tool that takes your code and makes it bundled, right? It's not in your code. It's in your project.
It's like it zips it, sort of like in a way.
Yeah, think of it as a separate utility that you use to transform your code. So it's not in your code, but you use it alongside of it. It's in the same project, but that's it.
Its own file then.
It's its own thing. Yep.
Oh, okay. And that's the thing with React. I'm seeing this. It's very specific. Each file has its own purpose. You don't try to put them together in one thing. It's like and it's much easier to manage because you can go in and target. I'm not using the word correctly, but like target that one component or that one whatever file is
Right.
on
The whole purpose of
really
creating
smart.
the whole purpose of creating a folder structure with different files is for you to manage the project. The computer doesn't care. As long as the code,
right.
as long as the code executes, so what, right?
Computers dumb.
Right. Yeah, the computer's only going to do what you tell it to do. So
Exactly. You got to be clear.
at least now, anyways, we'll see how.
Well, yeah, we won't get into AI yet.
But as far as the code in this file, in these files, it's just whatever I want to put in there, so I can manage, so I can think about it in such a way that I can manage my project. I know where things are. Like if I need to debug something, I know where to go, right? I'm not going to smash everything into one file because that's just too hard to read.
Yeah.
Right. But did you need to go back to exporting? We didn't really cover that.
Oh yeah, import, export, and when you use default versus whatever and
Right.
how. I mean, I understand the idea of importing and exporting between files just in general. And that's one of the things you do to help connect web pages and stuff like that. But in this context, I just want to get a clearer sense of
Yeah. So I'm going
You
to create a
know,
bunch of
the-
stuff in here.
syntax
Right.
or whatever. I understand the concept, just how to code it.
We'll do just a bunch of constants, and we'll do a function.
Greetings, Earthling. I don't have
And
my
then we'll
X-File shirt on
say-
today.
We'll return hello. Well, we'll do this.
And with return and console log, what really is the distinction? Because they're good ways, they're both good ways for you to kind of see if what you're doing is bringing back what you wanted to, right?
What do you mean by console log?
When you do console.log,
Uh-huh. So all you're doing is spitting out whatever you pass it into the console. That's all you're really doing. You're just taking whatever value you pass to console log, and it prints it out here, just for you to double check to see what's going on.
oh, in the console, yeah, okay. And return is actually physically
Return,
rendering it.
no, what return is doing is it's whatever, when you call this function, this is the value you get back.
Yep,
That's what return does. It doesn't mean it's rendered anywhere. It just means you got a value back. And now you can decide what you want to do with it.
that you can work with.
Right.
Okay. And you need a return when you're doing something like that. Did you always have returns in arrow functions?
Well, arrow functions won't always return something. If it's a one-liner and it's an implicit return, yes, it'll always return something.
By itself without return. Okay.
Well, I should, depending on the JavaScript engine that you're running. The function, if you don't tell it what to return, it'll return undefined. So it'll always return something, but in order for you to return the value you want, you need to use the return statement or like an implicit return, right?
So in this case, this is explicit.
This is explicit. I'm
Okay, good.
explicitly saying, here's my return statement. Give me back the right side of this expression.
Okay. Thank you. I mean, I know we went through this and I'm watching the videos, but it's just trying to really, in my own words, get it in, really get it, you know?
Right. So now if I wanted to export all of these, there's a couple different ways I can do it. I can do it as named exports, or I can do it as a default export. If I use named exports, we'll start with that because that's the easiest one.
Okay.
Right. I can import all of these if I want to. We'll go back to app. I'm going to import.
Which is the parent.
Well, you can import the stuff into any file. It just so happens that this is just, just a component called app. But you can import from any, you can import into any JavaScript file that you want. We're not really into parent-child yet. We're just importing stuff.
Question, you exported from the module JS.
Yes.
Did that actually do anything yet, or you have to do the
No, I have to
be
import it
complete?
first.
Okay.
Right. So right now,
It doesn't know where to go. Okay.
right. So I exported. Now I'm coming over here and I'm importing things. So I'm going to just import greeting. And I could put that right here. I could say greeting. And that'll get me back my hello world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because that's what it's returning. So that's cool. Or let's say I wanted to return all of these things, but I wanted to use the default method. So export default returns a single thing, but that single thing can be everything in the file. It's just the whole, give me back the whole module, right? And to do that, I need to tell it all the things I need to export. So if I were just to export greeting like this, I didn't tell it to do everything. I just told it greeting.
Mm-hmm.
So in here, I don't need the curly braces anymore because it's the default export and it still works.
It knows that that's
right. I could also do this. I could import my greeting from module, and that's going to work.
Don't forget your semicolon.
Oh, it's fine. It's rendering. So I'm calling it my greeting, even though it's called greeting here. And the reason I can do that is because it's the default export. It's just saying, oh, whenever you import something and you don't call it anything, well, you can call it whatever you want. It's going to plop whatever came from here into here. So I can call it my greeting and it'll work just fine.
So you wouldn't need the greeting line in this case.
Nope.
Okay.
But let's say I want to import everything. Well, there's a different way.
Enchilada.
Yeah, I want all of these things. So if I can only export one thing at a time, how am I going to export all of these?
In an array?
It's one way you could do it. Any other ways? Let's explore the array first. So we'll do hello world and greeting. So that's my default export. Now this is going to complain because that's not a function.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd have to say,
yeah,
I'll call it my greetings array. And then in here, I'd say greetings array. What's the first element in there? It's hello. Oh, I don't want that. I want this, and I want to call it. Because that's the greeting. Well, that gets really confusing, right? In an array.
Yeah, it does.
So the other way to do
though.
this, we'll just call it greeting module.
And you don't need dots. That's just a name.
So instead of this, I could export an object.
Okay, that makes more sense.
And
I still conflate those in my head sometimes, objects and arrays, but anyway.
Well,
it's
an array,
a series of.
Yeah, so an array is an object. It's just a
Yes.
special type of object.
Yes.
So
Objects at the level. Yep.
So here I have an object and there's a key of hello, which corresponds to the value hello and so on and so forth. So in here I could say greeting module dot greeting.
There you go.
That's a lot easier to read than if it was coming from an array. Now that's not to say you can't export arrays. Maybe the thing you're exporting is totally valid to export it that way. But when you're exporting like functions like this is typically the approach people take.
Yeah, and it makes
it's a lot easier to read this than greeting module square brackets 2. Like, what does that mean, right?
Yeah. And then in just vanilla JavaScript, that might be how you do it.
Well, you could do it anywhere like this.
Yeah. This is really cool. It's so
well, practically this is vanilla JavaScript. This part isn't React. Right here is not React.
Oh.
This part's React.
So we're mixing.
This is just JavaScript.
Okay.
React is JavaScript, but the React portion is like the JSX and the React DOM.render. It's those specific things that the library was made for, but you use it in conjunction with just plain JavaScript.
Right, and React and JSX, they do some of the clerical work, as it were,
Yes.
for you to make, not that you know how to do it, but now you don't have time to do it, so go for it and do it for me.
Right. Well, here's the thing. It's better to use something like React than to have to write all that out yourself.
Yeah.
Right? If you write all that out yourself, you're bound to come across bugs that are going to be hard to find. So these tools make it not only easier, but they make it quicker and they're more efficient, right? This library has been being developed for many, many years. And so why not take advantage of it?
Exactly.
So it makes developing applications a lot easier, quicker, and more consistently.
Yeah, it's like, when we started, everything we did, you sat down and you did it left to right, top to bottom. And once you know how to do that, now you don't have to do that anymore. You can, use this tool, You can drop bootstrapping, but it's like you've got to understand it to really, because there's
Yeah,
people that
yeah.
are so-called web devs that know how to use the tools, but you can tell by their website. So
Well,
yeah,
that's just the thing. It's good to know how things work under the hood,
yep,
but that doesn't mean you need to know everything under the hood in order to use a tool. You can know just enough to be able to use it, and then you can work on figuring out how the gears turn later on.
as long as you understand the principles of web design
Yeah, so you need to
and
know how this stuff.
navigation.
Yeah, you need to know how it works in
Yeah.
order to utilize
And
it.
from a user perspective too. That's real important. Okay.
Well, the user doesn't care.
No, when the user comes to the site, though, they care how it is to navigate the site and to use it.
Right. Yeah. So at that level, to know
what
how to use a site, that's what a user experience
That's
designer is for. Not
right.
necessarily a web developer, but a user
Well,
experience designer.
Yeah, but I think you need to keep that in mind, right?
Oh, sure. They go hand in hand.
That's what
But you have
pounded
to,
into
yeah.
my head as a librarian. You got to think about that, and yeah,
Right. But here's the thing: there's a distinction between the two. So you can be a user experience designer, or you could be a web developer, and you don't have to do the other person's job in order to get your job done. There's a reason those two exist. Now,
okay.
a lot of web developers are both. Like I'm both.
You need to understand both. Yeah.
I know how to create web applications. I can do both, but not everyone knows how to do both, nor do they want to. So that's why those two exist. So the person responsible for the flow of the application, how things are supposed to be, basically the workflow that the user goes through, how to make it a great experience, that's up to the user experience designer. It's not the job of the web developer. The job of the web developer is to implement what they came up with. Right? Now, it just so happens that most developers have to do the job of both because, maybe the company doesn't have a UX designer, or maybe you're just starting out and you want to start your own thing. So you have to wear all the hats, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But there is a
Libraries are like
distinction
that.
between the two.
Yeah. I remember from a web class I had with Dave Lankus at SU, and this was in '99, so things have changed, but we really talked a lot right up front about when you're coming up with the website. It was kind of like maybe a wireframe. I don't know what it was. You really have to keep in mind though, so that's where my brain, but anyway, gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's good to be able to know how to do both.
Yep.
It
Or be able to speak the language so you can work on it.
Yeah, so it just makes you a better developer in the end.
Yeah. Thank you
maybe,
so much.
Maybe down the road you're like, you know what? I really want to focus on UX. You don't know. You don't know until you start really getting into it and saying, I really like this portion better.
Yeah.
And just know that if you like, user experience designing better, there's jobs for that now. Right. So you don't have to say, well, I'm a web developer, I can't do this other stuff full time. Well, you can. And so there's many options that are available now. It's not solely up to one person anymore.
Right. Yeah, that's changed a lot in the last however many years since last century. Thank you.
So, yep.
Very helpful. And thank you for taking all that time for me. It's like a mentor session. I really appreciate it.
Sure. Is exporting clear now?
Definitely.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Okay, so who else has got something? Questions you got?
Brielle posted some code in the student channel,
The student channel?
the student pasted channel.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's see. Was this not working properly, or did you have a question on it?
Yeah, it won't display. So there's nothing underlined or nothing wrong with it according to Code Sandbox, except for the fact that it's not showing up.
Oh, there is one particular thing. So
Oh, there is.
yes, there's a. So look at the line where your filtering task goes to task dot is complete.
Mm-hmm.
So look specifically at task.isComplete equals false.
Oh, because it's filtering out. Well, wouldn't it still show the true one then if that should be true there, filtering true?
No, so what you're doing here, the single, what does a single equals sign do? I'll say it that way. I'm giving you a clue.
Oh, so it labels it as true rather than is actually, I need triple equals, right? Is that what I need?
Yeah, so you're assigning the value instead of,
Oh, yes.
yeah.
It still doesn't like it, but is
You wanna-
that the,
Maybe quit out and refresh it and clear your cache.
Do you want to share the screen?
well, I use my tablet for the Zoom instead, but
Oh,
I can,
Gotcha.
if you give me a minute, I can pull up Zoom on my computer
Just taking
and join that as
You're
well.
Everything else looks okay.
Hmm.
Well, except for what's in the P tag, actually. So this was a similar issue that we had talked about a little earlier. I don't know if you were on yet.
I got on a little late, yeah.
So the thing you're trying to render within the paragraph tag, that filtered task, that's an object. It's got an object
Oh.
with 2 properties. So
So I need to,
you want to render the correct property off that object. That's why. That's probably why you're not seeing anything, even after the change of the comparison operator. Right? Because React doesn't know how to render an object, but it knows how to render properties.
Okay.
Off.
Oh, so if I do, so I did filtered task dot label and I see the 2 items, and that's all I need to do then?
You got it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure. All right, that was easy. Give me a harder one. You guys got anything else?
Where's Waldo? No.
Mhm. How are you guys feeling about how this previous week went? Anything that you think we should be doing differently? I mean, we're going to be getting to a project, so it's going to be a lot of reiterating what we've already done, but in the sense that we're going to be using it now for, you know, a specific purpose. But as far as the way the flow of the class, is it good? I mean, we lost a day, so I had to kind of cram in some stuff. So I would have liked to take more time on certain areas, you know, and have longer like Q&A kind of sessions within there. It's just getting everything done in this, because if we didn't complete what we did this past week, we might not be able to finish the application properly. So it's kind of unfortunate, but I mean, if we don't finish the entire application, that's not the worst thing in the world, because you'll have access to the completed, you already have access to the completed application if you wanted to check it against what we've done or what you're doing, if you want to do it separately. So there's always that, but it's good to be able to see how it's being created rather than looking at a whole bunch of finished code, right? So it's like, okay, well, why did you do that? Like, what's the why behind this particular pattern or this particular component? And that's what I really, really want to go through, is why this is being created this way, you know? But yeah, so if you have any feedback that you want to pass on, I know you had those 30-second survey forms or whatever they're called. But if you want to voice any opinions or concerns or anything that you really want to see happen for the next couple of weeks, let me know. Just want to make sure this is as beneficial as it can be, because React can get pretty heavy. And going forward, like Node and creating APIs and then combining that with React, it's not going to get lighter. So I just want to make sure we get as much done and get as done in as clear a manner as we can. Any other questions on the homework or exercises? Or any other, like, so yesterday we went over props and state.
Just trying to get clear with this final project because we've already got a week done. In terms, and I know I asked this before, but in terms of how much we're kind of doing as a team and how much we're doing on our own and how we should be planning. I mean, it's not tangible to me what exactly I should be doing for my homework, you know, in terms of how often and when and how much and the time to put into it. And
Yeah, so I'll answer that in the context of the homework that's been assigned so far to start. So the first homework that was assigned is due, like I said, at the end of the 3 weeks. So over those 3 weeks, you're going to gain enough knowledge to be able to finish that. Right. So I'll have gone over everything we need to know how to do in order to complete that assignment. I don't expect you to be able to complete that one just yet. Right. It's just work on it.
we can do parts of it though already?
Absolutely. It's just you don't need to turn it in until
Right.
until the 3
Okay.
weeks, right? So once we get to something that you're like, oh, I can finish this part of the homework now because we learned this portion. Absolutely, go ahead and do it, right? And then as far as the homework that I assigned for over the weekend, that only pertains to what we went over this past week. So everything in that one, you should be able to complete based on what we went over. And if you need to rewatch portions, you can rewatch them and gain hints and clues that way. But everything in the homework from this past weekend or for this weekend that's due tonight, you should be able to complete based on everything I went over this past week. Does that make sense?
I was just still trying to get a project management handle on the final project. So
the final project, for your capstone?
no, but that's a whole other story.
Okay, so the thing will be
no, for this
class.
thing for you.
Right. So, all right. So the way I designed this was more of a follow along demonstration of how to create this. You don't have to turn that in as an assignment, right? Because you can literally copy paste the completed code and hand that in. It's like, well, that's not really doing anything.
No.
The whole purpose of this kind of classroom assignment is for us to follow along to see how React applications can be created. Not necessarily that you have to turn it in. This is just like this past week was going over the basics, and that's an easy thing to turn into an assignment, right? It's like, okay, show me that you learned what we taught, right?
Mhm. But
creating an entire application, that's different. You can't just say, oh, well, create this application. It's like, well, there's a lot of things that go into building an application. And the whole reason that I designed this is so that I can demonstrate how that's done, like how to actually go about creating these things. We don't have to use everything that's in that app. And we're not going to use things that maybe I would have wanted to put into that app. But the application that we'll be building is just basically further instruction on how to use React. Not necessarily what you need to do, but how to use it, right? This is how we can create components that are reusable. This is how we can create like nav bars. This is how we can, jump from one page to another in React. Like, how do we do that? That's what it's going to demonstrate. It's not necessarily like do all these things and turn it in. It's just a demonstration of one way we can build an application that's completely valid.
right. So there's two parts of that then. We are doing that together.
Yes.
But we're also doing it on our own. And that's where I get kind of confused.
So the thing you're doing on your own is the homework. The thing we're doing together is the demonstration, the thing that I'm teaching.
So we're almost building two versions of the app in a way. And one is
we're building one version of the app. We're all going to do it together. Try to follow along with that. And then,
but that's not a deliverable for homework.
No. Homework is completely different. That is not related to the app. It doesn't even have components that are in the app. They're just separate exercises to demonstrate that you learned what we were teaching.
For that final.
Just in general for React, right? So I don't, I could create a completely different application and the homework will still be relevant because it just creates the competencies that you would have picked up during that time that we created the application.
Right. The final homework is also an app.
No.
Oh, okay. Never mind.
Nope. Yeah, the homework is four little separate assignments that each handle a different part of the things that we've learned.
Okay. That we gleaned from doing the app together.
They're just a little bit more complex
Yeah.
than your current assignment.
I just have to look at it more closely. I was thinking we were all building an app together. Boom, that was it. And that was like the homework. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, I'm supposed to be doing something on my own during this. I got it now. Thank you.
Yep. So the final homework is what you'll do by yourself, completely separate from the app. The
But
application,
based on all the stuff
right.
I learned.
Application that we build together in class is solely there for instruction purposes, not for deliverable.
Wonderful. Thank you. That clears it up for me.
All right,
Thank you.
good. I'm glad it did.
Sorry, I keep pressing you with questions, but it's like you're the computer and I'm the coder and I'm trying to tell you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else? We've got 6 minutes here.
I'm just going back through the class videos and, working my way through them again and kind of doing the exercises in conjunction with that.
good.
It helps me a lot to make comments in between all the lines of code from our original, I wasn't able to completely code along on Thursday, so I'm kind of filling that in as I go too. But yeah, it helps me a lot to put lots of comments in between to explain what the code is doing. So that's kind of what I'm working on. I got as far as the end of use state, and I was just about to start the class videos with use effect when I realized I was 5 minutes late for the office hours. So if you want to go over use effects, I guess, if nobody else has any questions.
Let's do use effect. In fact, that'll be a great thing to go over.
Thanks for bringing that up, Kyle. That is very helpful.
So I'll create a new component. What would be a good example for use effect? What did we do last time? I think we did like a heading or a headline or something. We'll do that. All right, so we're going to export something called heading. It's a component. It takes props so we can compare them. We're going to return some markup. And we'll have our headline, a subheading. So this would be like our title, so we get something on the screen. And then we'll import that real quick. Let's just replace this. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Going too fast for this thing. All right, so now we have this component, and let's say that when it renders, we want to change the title to be something else. So the way we would do that in a class component is we would listen for a certain lifecycle event to happen, which happens to be component did mount. So I know, okay, the component's mounting to the DOM. Let's do some logic. So with function components, we have to use effect, which is a function from React. And the way we use it is we call the function, and it takes two parameters. The first thing it takes is a callback. The second thing it takes is an array of what's called a dependency list. In fact, it's right there on the screen, dependency list. So inside, before we get to the dependencies, let's just talk about the function here. Now, you may think, well, does anything get passed into this function by default? No, it's just a callback. You decide what this thing is. So the idea of an effect is that you typically use this as a means of having a side effect. It's not necessarily, how do I put this? It's something you want to happen that can be different. So let's say you have a function that when you call it, it does the same thing every time. It always returns the value 42. No matter how many times you call it, it'll always return that value. Well, what if inside that function, there was something that changed it? So now you didn't only return value 42, but you did something in the DOM, like you updated something in the DOM. That's called a side effect, right? So every time you call it, it could be something different. So that's what effects kind of are used for. It's like, okay, well, this component will render the same time or the same thing if I give it the same props every time. But if I want to do something different, I have to use an effect, or a side effect, right? Now, in this case, what we're going to be doing is it's going to be the same result as just kind of coincidence. But these effects are typically things like, as soon as my component mounts, I want to grab some data from the database. That data coming back might be different every time, but that's why it's an effect. It's different than the normal thing that's returned. All right, so what do we want to do in here? Well, we want to change the title. So that means we need to store our state for the title. So this use state, sorry, title.
So use state precedes use effect in that import.
Oh, it doesn't have to. It can go.
I'm just trying to, okay, so it's not like one is like the object, the other, whatever. They're just in there. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
Just trying to understand the structure. Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Object, you can pull it out in any order. If it's an array, you can't. It has to be. The whole purpose of an array is that it's an order, right? So I'll do title, and then we'll render title. Cool. So now we have the same thing. Oops, I put set title. Sorry. Autocomplete failed me there. All right, so we can clearly see that when this component renders, it renders something called title, which is just the word title. But let's say when this mounts to the DOM, we want to change it. We want to say, hey, when you mount to the DOM, set title to my title. Now, what this is doing is every time this component renders, it's going to set this. That's what useEffect does. useEffect will render the first time the component mounts. It'll render, or useEffect will be called the first time the component mounts, every time the component updates, and kind of like everything in between. Every single time this component renders or re-renders, without fail, useEffect will fire.
So that whole thing's an event.
You can think of it like that.
That
Yeah,
function, it's like an event function. Would that be?
yeah, you can think of it like that. Yep. So let's say that I don't want it to fire every single time the component renders. I only want to do it on the first time, right? Well, it's guaranteed to always fire the first time.
Yep.
But now that second parameter comes into play, this list of dependencies. Anytime that there's something in this list that changes, this will fire.
Yep.
But only when these things change, right? So if I leave it empty, useEffect is guaranteed to fire once when it mounts. But because that list is empty, nothing's going to change in that list, right? So it never fires again, ever, right? So that's how I only fire this thing when the component mounts. I just give it an empty dependencies list. Or if something else has changed, maybe I render this component, it's re-rendered 5 times, and then on the 6th time, a new piece of, a new prop comes in, and this is different than it was last time. Maybe it was true, now it's false. Oh, it's gonna say, oh, okay, this changed. Fire this thing. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And then you can do all kinds of things in these use effects. We could have, let's see, actually, let me do this. We're
I
past
really appreciate your explanations because I know we went over this before and it was like I sort of got, and now it's like I get it a little better already. Thank you.
That's good. So let me go back into the, oh, that's my, where is, years and code? That was from yesterday. I think I put something in here that I was going to show. Is it this one? Wasn't this one? 1 second. It's okay that we're going over. I don't mind it. Let's see. In class day 2. Is it this one? I set up an example, like a kind of like a fake API endpoint. Yeah, right here. So while we were on break, I did want to get to the what did I say it was? Working with data in React. We're going to do it when we go over the application, so we're definitely going to be working with data. We're not going to miss that. But I was kind of hoping to touch upon it before class ended. We just unfortunately ran out of time for the week, but I can start this a little bit. Anyone that's missing this office hours is not going to miss out on this, so don't worry. I'm not like going to be ignoring this at all. We're going to be using this quite a bit as we build out the project. But what this does is this is going to return, what's this going to return? Some fake data. So it's got an object with an ID, a value, and a name. And then after 2 seconds of calling this quote unquote API, it'll return this fake data to us. So let's go over to, oh, you know what? Let's do this in the context of what we're working on today. Oops. No. New file. Plug it up here. Okay. So here, let's say we want to render out the result of calling that API. Use effect is how we would do that. So what I'll do is, and this is a pattern you're going to see all over in production React applications, is as soon as this component mounts, I want to fetch some data. That's the perfect time to fetch the data, right? I want that data to come in as the component's being launched for the first time, so that when the data comes back, my component's already there and it can be displayed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, I'm going to import my mock API. I think is that what I called it in here? Mock get. Import mock get from mock API. And I'm going to have I need a placeholder for this data, right? I can't just like display it. I need a place to hold it so that the component knows where to look to render this stuff. So I'll say data, set data, equals use state. So I'll have a piece of state. And before it renders anything, it's just going to be some empty object. In fact, let's do this. This way we can actually see the data without having to go through the whole thing and render all of the properties separately.
Is that preview?
It's
The
called
PR
pre-format. It stands for pre-formatted code.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
I'd never seen that before the
That's
homework.
new.
I actually thought that was really cool when I saw that in the homework. I was like, oh, that's handy.
Yeah, I could put anything in here. I could say hi, hello, right? And then it's going to display this object for me so I can kind of get a sense of what's in it. So let's get rid of that. Let's go back to our empty object, just so that we can see the data. And then when this component mounts, we want to say, okay, component's mounting, cool. Let's go fetch some data. So we're going to call mock get. And what that's going to give us back is a promise. So we have to .then it. And what that's going to give us is our data. And then once we get that data, we have to set that into our state to replace what's already there. We'll say set data. And the data that comes in. In fact, let's do this. Let's call this JSON. So we're getting back JSON. You can see right here, it's rendering it. So if I were to save this and I'll refresh this, we'll see this component. And then 2 seconds later, our data shows up. Without this, we'll never see anything, right? We can't just, here's the difference between putting it in a use effect, doing this. Every time this component renders, what's going to happen? This is going to get called, right? Every single time. What if this component updates 5 times within 2 seconds? Those are 5 network calls that just went out. That's a lot of bandwidth we're taking up. That's not very efficient. What if that data changed and it's not really the data we wanted at that moment in time, right? So instead of just calling the data and doing that, we want to designate a time when it gets called, which is the first time it gets rendered. Refresh that. Cool. Here's another thing that we could do. Let's say that, let's do this. This is another good, a good pattern to know about. All right, so let's say every time this title changes, I want to refetch the data, right? So what I'm going to do is oops. Just so we can actually see this. Every time the title changes, we want to refetch the data from our endpoint. Well, the way this is set up, this will only happen once. The first thing that's going to happen is the component mounts. We set our data to an empty object. We make a call out. 2 seconds later, we get back some data, and now we have populated data. But let's say we want to, let's say this title changes, and we go, oh, the title doesn't match the return stuff we got back anymore. Let's make a new network request. Well, how do we figure that out? Well, we look at the dependency list. Anytime this value changes, oh, let's do this thing, right? So now when I click this button, you should see an empty object and then it be repopulated later. So new title, that changes, we just got a new network. We just made a new request. Does that make sense? Now working with data we'll get into, but I really wanted to highlight the fact that this gets called whenever something in here changes. And this is a great example of how to do that, right? So we've got, oops. First thing that happens, use effect gets called because it's the mount. So that's cool. It makes the network request, quote unquote network request, comes back, sets the data, cool. Anytime something in this list changes, we're going to refire this use effect. And there we go. Does this help clear up use effect? Right, so if I were to do this, refresh this, got my data, Yeah, I can click this all day long. This is never going to fire because we're not listening for the change anymore. Right? It's only when we actually listen for specific changes that this will fire. Along with, of course, the first render.
Right. So if you wanted to change what display, like you could use the new data that you got back from the server, like say something changed in the data. I don't know, if somebody filled like a form in and the data on the form went up and then you want to have it come back with their information or something like that.
Now that would be
How you would use it?
that would be a different use case. I'm not responding to that. Like if I have form data and I submit it, typically what's going to happen is I'm going to display a new component that's its sole purpose is for displaying that data, right?
I
Especially
was just trying to think how the data would have changed.
So in this example, let's say that this right here, let's say we'll tie it into the New York Times, right? So let's say that this title represents a specific genre in the New York Times. So anytime the title changes, I say, oh, got a new title. I should pass that in, and then I'll get back the results for that specific list of books. Right? That would be a good use case for that. Not so much for
if you were looping through the different categories or whatever, or the different titles.
Right. But let's say we're displaying one genre at a time. Let's say I don't know, books about food, right? So culinary books. Let's say that I changed the title on my page and now it says fiction. Well, those culinary books aren't relevant anymore, right? So that changed. So I'm listening for the title change. I see, oh, it's a new title. So I'm going to pass in the new title to my endpoint. It's going to give me back new results. That's different from a form submission where you're filling out your name, your email, social security number, all these different things that would plug it into some form somewhere, right? The result of that is typically you're going to another portion of your application, right? So you fill out the form. Now you're being redirected to maybe your landing page or maybe your account page or whatever happens to be, right? Or in the case
the new user chose a different category of books, fiction or cookbooks or whatever, and then the data would change. Got it.
Right. That would be a good use case for this type of pattern. Changing the data that's on the screen based upon the user's actions. Make sense? Does this help with use effect?
Yeah, it helps to think of a real world scenario. So yeah, that's good. Thanks.
Absolutely. All right. So any last questions before we sign off? Karen, it's like you wanted to say something.
I just put a couple more comments in the chat, but you probably already saw them. So.
Oh, in which chat? The Zoom chat?
Zoom chat.
Oh, sorry, my thing got closed. So the screenshots. Let's see. Code from Lax class demos been pasted into Slack. Team channel would be very helpful to also have screenshot slides from each iteration. What do you? I'm just trying to follow what you mean by screenshots of each iteration. Oh, you're muted.
Slides that capture each, because I know they're in the Slack, but it's like, you got to copy that anyway. And it was just visually, and I know we have the videos, but just, if there's one specific thing I'm trying to work on, I could pull up that slide that has that code on it I don't know. I just the thought.
Is that, you mean going forward?
Well, yeah, I mean, it would have been nice last week too, but yeah, I mean,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, no, let's go back and do everything over because you have spare time.
Well, yeah, so as we were going along, the reason I didn't really make slides to start was I wasn't exactly sure how I was going to demonstrate each feature.
it's very dynamic,
Because
yes.
it was going to be dependent upon questions that were given to me while we were going through it.
Yes,
So I didn't want to anticipate a specific order if, you know what I mean, if your questions were going to be very
yeah,
different.
no,
I could tell a slide for something, be like, well, here's this, and it may not make sense, right? So
right. I mean,
that's-
you're not just introducing concepts. I mean, we're actually doing the process while it's quite organic. All right, no, I understand that. And I've been trying to grab screenshots too, of things as we go, but I don't know. That's fine. You're good.
So here's the thing about the remaining 2 weeks is that we're essentially going to be doing that without slides. So as we're going,
Okay, that's fine.
you'll be able to look at the completed code in those specific components for your references. And so as we complete a component, it'll always be referenced in that completed code folder, right? We're going to be rewriting everything, but I'll be explaining why we're rewriting it in the way we're writing it. And so hopefully that will help. So
Yeah,
you
the
don't need a
colors.
slide per se, because it already exists.
Yeah, it's just the color coding of the code. I'm visual, and it's very helpful. And if I grab it, well, maybe it does do that if I grab it from
Pull the
Slack.
Yeah, so if you pull the repo down and you look at the code in Visual Studio Code, you'll have all your color formatting right there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that actually kind of leads to my next question. I was wondering in Sandbox, is there an easy way to just get everything, like after you finish the whole homework assignment or whatever you're working on, to get everything
Well,
downloaded on your personal computer?
Stay in your sandbox forever as long as Code Sandbox still exists. Like that doesn't go away.
Just leaving it there. Part of the video I watched, you said a bunch of stuff changed when you left, like after you closed out of the sandbox, and I was like, oh, maybe I should have that like somewhere on my computer.
No, that was a hiccup on my part. I think I closed the sandbox before I saved one of the files.
Okay.
And so it tried to revert to its last known save.
Okay.
I think that's like
during the module with Gus, I was having some weirdness, like either with my computer or whatever it was. And so he decided that I had gremlins. So maybe you hit a gremlin.
Gremlin, yeah. The way Code Sandbox saves its stuff, you can work with Code Sandbox offline. It actually saves a copy of what you're doing inside the browser. So whenever I closed it, it probably just tried to revert to that because maybe I didn't save a file before I closed it. But yeah, so as long as you don't delete the sandbox in your dashboard, you'll have access to it for as long as you need. All right.
Hence our slides, right?
Yep, those are your slides.
Thank you so much.
Yep. And then also, I know someone had a question on oh, it was for the color theme that I was using in Visual Studio Code. I think I made a mention of that in
You
Slack.
put it in Slack, yeah. So
Prettier.
I'm all set. It is helpful for me to have the colors match up. It's easier for me to find wherever you are when you're scrolling up and down.
You
and stuff.
can actually use, I haven't looked at it in Code Sandbox, but I'm pretty sure you can upload themes into here too.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, it
Prettier.
hasn't really been an issue since the first night because we've been using Code Sandbox and we all have the same colors anyway. So
Color theme. So
if we
file.
go back to VS Code, it's helpful. So
I'm the same way. Yeah.
Oh, right here. Monakai.
Okay.
This
I
is-
forget what I have along with
There we go.
prettier.
Now it'll look exactly like
Ooh,
VS Code.
that's cool.
Yeah, because in
I
all
like that.
honesty, Code Sandbox is kind of just like a wrapper around VS Code's engine. So you should be able to select the same themes. That's just, again, file.
Oh
preference.
yeah, go on your site. Yeah, I haven't even looked at that yet. Yeah, because it really is. It is visual. I mean, back in the day, it was all chromatic, monochrome on a tiny monitor and command code. This is so much more fun.
Yeah, there's like, what was the one? They get pretty interesting. I can't work with that. That hurts my eyes. But yeah, that's why those themes exist, depending on the person using,
Everybody's different.
So it depends what works well for your eyes. There's like high contrast ones too for people.
Oh, I was just going to ask about that.
Like,
My husband has a coworker that basically he's blind. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. They're doing something for him with the office equipment and so forth. But I think of him and it's like, yeah, he would need something like that.
yeah, one of these, I don't know. I have to remember the name of it, but there's a right here, high
High
contrast,
contrast. Yep. Accessible code.
right? For someone it's really hard for them to see, this would be a
Yep.
great theme. For me, this also hurts my eyes.
Out of curiosity, I haven't explored yet, but is there also a setting, if somebody, like if you need to code, but you can't use the keyboard, that you have to use some kind of assistive technology device to code and stuff? Do any of these tools have that kind of built in? Because you're a user in that case of
that would be dependent on, so Code Sandbox, I don't know.
Okay.
Visual Studio Code, it depends. That's dependent on what app is installed in your computer, right?
what assistive technology the person has. Okay.
Yeah, so if you're talking and speaking and it reverses it, you just have to make sure that application is running at the same time you're running your VS
Yeah.
Code or whatever.
Yeah, I will explore that some more because that is an area that I'm passionate about, that I've done work in the past as a grad student. So, and just, in this case, the user is the developer.
Right. So as a developer, that's a tricky one for developers, right? Because we use all different types of symbols and different characters, right? So
Yeah.
that can mean different things, right? So that would be a technology where it has to adapt. Like you have to it has to learn your patterns, right?
Yes.
So if I say function,
AI.
I could say, hey, new function named whatever, and then it could spit out the code, but you have to tell it, right? That's almost like a machine learning type of endeavor.
Exactly. And I don't know if you've ever heard of IDXL. Most people have not. That is what they're using at my husband's employer. And it was built in the 90s by a guy that wasn't a programmer. And it's a disaster. And this guy who has this visual thing is basically blind. He's trying to code this impossible stuff. So I think about that. So anyway, yeah, I can explore that later in my spare time.
Cool.
Thank you.
We're way past time, so I'll make sure I'm not going over my hours too much. So I will see you all tomorrow evening.
You got it.
All right, and then we're going to start talking. We're going to touch upon, if there's any, we'll do a recap or hey, what do you still have questions on first thing when we get started? Give everyone a chance to ask their questions. And then we'll start talking about the application that we'll be building. And then we're going to get right into it.
I really appreciate your pedagogy, your teaching style. It's wonderful because, this stuff like the back of your hand. You could do this in your sleep. We don't. And it's
I sleep, actually. I dream about it.
Well, yeah, I've been dreaming about style sheets and SAS versus CSS, and they're having like a brawl and div tags are chasing me, No, but we aren't you. And it's like, you have to meet us where we're at. And you really have to do this stuff and process it and really get it in here. And it's like, you're so good about understanding that and not just saying, okay, this stuff is easy, get it, got good, go, let's go to the next thing. I mean, I really appreciate that you're doing that because I'm still a little shaky on just JavaScript stuff itself.
Yeah, so thanks for that. I am
this is very helpful to me because I'm actually struggling in this program right now.
Yeah,
and having conversations about that. So
here's the thing with React. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at JavaScript. And the better you get at JavaScript, the better you're going to get at React.
Yeah. And it's fun. I mean, I love it.
Good. That's awesome.
I need more time than I have. So, yeah. But yeah.
We all do.
Yeah. But I mean, I really, my brain is slower than it used to be.
Cool. Yeah. Well, hey.
At least it's working.
It's working.
Been through a lot.
So that wraps up the office hours. I will see you all tomorrow. And we'll start.
I'll bring the pizza.
All right. You have to email me a slice.
Yeah, I'll send it to you virtually through Ethernet. Thanks a lot. See y'all later. You look hot, Karen. Is that a backdrop or are you outside?
No, I'm outside.
I had to come back in. I couldn't breathe.
Yeah, no, I'm sitting under a tree, so it's nice.
Yeah, it's just that, yeah. Well, enjoy.
All right.
Thanks.
Chowder. Hey,
Bye.
Latonia.